must start off with what has been going on within our party, and then generally cover the regional and the global landscape. We are very happy that the rains have come in their abundant showers. We are expecting a bumper harvest across all the crops and across all the regions of the country. This is a blessing from nature coming to the ambitions of our party, which is to deliver prosperity to the generality of the Zimbabwe populace and fulfill our covenant as a party with the Zimbabwe people, which started with the formation of the National Liberation Movement in the 1960s and leading to our reacquiring our sovereignty. And today we are consolidating our national democratic revolution in Zimbabwe, and we are also fulfilling on the delivery of prosperity to the Zimbabwe populace. We have a year in which the party continues to score major victories. We are confident about the future and the continuity of the process which the Second Republic has done to develop Zimbabwe as a modern African state, to be the foremost African modern state, with the prospects of Vision 2030, aspiring for middle-income state status or middle-income nation status for Zimbabwe. The president is doing a good job. The party is confident about what he's doing. The general populace of the country is also happy about what he's doing. He has got a happy marriage with the party membership. He also has got a happy marriage with the populace of the country. Within the party, there is a resolution number 1 of the various conferences which have been held, and out of that resolution number 1 has been born a bill which is going to be presented before Parliament, based on the aspirations of the party and the people, on resolution number 1, which is essentially to extend the term of the president by 2 years, so that we synchronize the electoral calendar, but we also give him enough time to handle the party issues in such a way that there is a smooth transitional processes within the party body politic. This is the desire of the party membership, and we want to congratulate the Speaker of Parliament, the Minister of Justice, for the gazetting of the bill on resolution number 1, and we are expecting to debate it before the 2 houses of Parliament sometime within the political calendar of Parliament. And we expect that that bill will pass smoothly from the membership of the party, from the elected deputies who are in Parliament. And so far, we are very happy that there is a common consensus. There's a consensus between all the parties in Parliament as to what concerns this bill. Yes, there are some discordant voices, but there are discordant voices which are outside Parliament, and most of them is the usual crowd, which is an inborn attitude against ZANU-PF. They don't want ZANU-PF to be in power. They are particularly miffed that our president made it to become the leader of Zimbabwe, and they make all sorts of noises, but they have faced the elections in the past time and time again, time after time. They faced the elections and they failed dismally to appeal to the Zimbabwe population. They are the ones who are making the usual noises about this bill. But as far as the party membership, as far as the populace of the Zimbabwe is concerned, they think it is the right thing. A man is doing a good job. He hasn't done anything which would warrant him not to be meriting this consideration of the extension of the term. They are actually happy that this term is extended. And of course, the biggest cheerleading is coming from the business community within the economic body politic of Zimbabwe. The business community wants continuity with the current leadership, which is doing absolute wonders in terms of the revival and the growth of the Zimbabwe economy. Across every index, the president is scoring beyond 100%, across every index of economic activity in the country. There is a vitality in the national economy which has never been seen before. And the previous association of prosperity with post-colonial, pro-Eurocentric strategic vision has come to naught. Zimbabwe has pioneered a new vision based solely on the interests of Zimbabwe as a Pan-Africanist state. And that vision is resonating with all the relevant constituencies which are the pillars of the Zimbabwean society. So this resolution number 1, we are very confident as a party that it will sail through Parliament. And it's not peculiar to Zimbabwe. There have been a number, even President Trump is looking at how he could also get an extension of his term, or possibly run again for a 3rd term. He's anchoring for that possibility. Other African countries have done it. They've looked at it, and in any case, it's better that we synchronize the electric calendar rather than have odd dates about when we are holding elections. So we are happy about the gazetting of the bill, which was done last Monday. We also within the party have been very busy. We started the year with our Secretary General, Advocate Mudenda, having 2 seminars of the top leadership of the party. First, we started with the elected leadership of the party, which is the Central Committee. We had a seminar in Gweru, which was very successful, the first one of its kind by the party since independence, that we have a Central Committee seminar which takes stock of what the party has been doing, particularly in the last 5 to 6 years, learns from what we have done and see where we can take off what needs to be tweaked so that we continue the current vague of prosperity delivering which we are doing to the people of Zimbabwe. It was a very, very successful seminar where we saw presentations from within the party, but also from outsiders who are viewing our party. It is a maiden seminar by the party, so obviously we are testing new waters, but we are confident that this will be done more frequently, because we need a party where the leadership is well informed about the work which is being done by its executive arm, which is the government of Zimbabwe, and to properly give advice to that executive, because we are the ones who organize the electorate on the ground, the party. We organize the electorate and the populace on the ground. So we are the ones who have got our feelers to the populace. We have our antennas all over the country. We are a structured party. The most structured party probably on the African continent is the Zimbabwe African National Union's Patriotic Front, the one where in this building. We believe that on the African continent there is no party as structured and as organized as ZANU-PF. And it is the sinews of organization which we owe to the National Liberation Movement, because we had to be organized and structured to win the war against the foremost imperial power of modern times, which is the United Kingdom. You are against the British Army, Imperial Army in Africa. You have to be up to scratch in terms of organization. That is the organization we built up as we fought, and that is the organization we ride upon as a party to continue to develop this country. And this is the organization which we now want to be cogently and tightly led by an informed central committee. So these seminars will be periodic. We actually see ourselves beginning to harness much more of the academia of Zimbabwe, so that we have different academies for for various sectors of the economy. Academies are centers of peer-reviewed knowledge about what is going on any particular issue or subject or endeavor in a country. And if it is properly peer-reviewed, then it is the most refined knowledge about what can be done about the future of Zimbabwe. So we are going back, to our revolutionary roots. A revolution can only be as successful as its intellectual and academic capacity. If you flounder at that level, you cannot deliver on the prospects of what a revolutionary movement is about. This is why, the foremost intellectual of the country at that time, Chitepo, and the others, JZ, from the two movements, national liberation movements, that's how they built the structure which eventually became the military force, which is, of course, the crucible of our modern Zimbabwe state, which is autonomous, which is Africa-centric, and for which the president champions. So this will be a regular feature of the party on the party calendar. We just didn't stop the seminar with the elected leadership of the party. We also felt that the executive wing of the party, which is the Politburo, equally needs to be informed about what the president is doing as the leader of the party and as their messenger to the government. And we had in Harare last week a two-day seminar of the Politburo of Zimbabwe, and we brought experts from outside. We had a wonderful address from Professor Zobo from the university, from the Great Zimbabwe University, about where we are and where we want to go. We are tapping on the intellectual milieu of Zimbabwe so that we get the best advice as to where we want to go with to sustain the prosperity which we have done. This is the Parliament just had passed the bill from the Minister of Finance, which is the anchor of the next stage of our economic revival, which is National Development Strategy number 2. We are proud to say that NDS1, which was essentially a learning stage, has brought out such a vibrance in the Zimbabwean economy. There is a new confidence in National Development Strategy number 2, because we have national case studies of successfully harnessing the energy of the people of Zimbabwe and marrying it to our bountiful resources, be they in mining, be they in agriculture, be they in tourism, indeed across all the domain, the vitality which is in the SME sector of Zimbabwe. All this is being harnessed. So the NDS2 is now a more confident document about where we want to go, because we are mining upon the case studies of the success which we have delivered to date. There is palpable success in the economy of Zimbabwe. We are among the top performers now on the African continent. We have a strengthening currency, the ZiG, because fortune always favors those who are prepared. When we went for gold 4 or 5 years ago as the basis of our currency. There were pundits in the West, particularly from John Hopkins University in New York, who were really badgering Zimbabwe, saying there is another attempt to set up a currency, and they've done it so many times, it is going to fail since the collapse of the Zimbabwe dollar in 2008. Now, of course, they are quiet. We have succeeded in setting up a national currency, and it's strengthening. But more important, the geopolitics at the global stage now actually are saying that gold is the future of the world currency as we transition from the petrodollar, which is dead or which is dying, upon which America had been the overlord of the world financial system. That petrodollar is collapsing. Maybe you don't know what it is. It's essentially an agreement which was signed between America and Britain to bypass England, which wanted to champion the gold standard since the end of the Second World War. America says we can't use gold, which is not our main commodity of economic activity. We use petrol and diesel for the movement of our cars because we are the foremost industrialized country with a big car population. So since we use petrol, why should we use the currency of a third country or third countries to buy that commodity, which is petrol and petroleum? And they went to the biggest producer of the moment of the post-war era, which is Saudi Arabia, and they said to Saudi Arabia, "We'll pay you in US dollars because we are your biggest customer." So once the biggest customer and the biggest supplier colluded to say we pay in US dollars, everyone else in the world was then forced to buy that commodity, petroleum, in US dollars. So it became a volition of every country to have reserve currency in US dollars, so that you have to buy the most important commodity for the mobility of and sustenance of industry, which is petroleum. But two things have conspired against that right now. The first thing is that America itself became a major petroleum producer through the fracking method. I mean, where they pump water into the American sands and petroleum comes out, gushes out. So America is now a net producer of petroleum. It has excess. That excess has to go to the global market. So Saudi Arabia has suddenly lost its most important customer, America. But not only has it lost it, that customer has also become the competitor. So Saudi Arabia has begun to say, why should we continue to use the currency of a competitor, the dollar, the US dollar, to buy a commodity? So you can't be controlling the buying and controlling the selling at the same time. So the biggest customers for Saudi Arabia now are China and India, which are net importers of petroleum. And these two countries are saying, why do we need to trade with you, Saudi Arabia, in the currency of a third party, the US dollar? You might as well trade in rupees, then we have a petro rupee, or we might as well trade in yuan, which is a petro yuan, because these are the two immediate customers on the global stage. So there is now the prospect of the abandonment of the US dollar as the major driver of transactions in international commerce. And where do we go if the US, if nature abhors a vacuum? If we remove the petrodollar, the currency of ages, of millennia, is gold. It is the last refugee when everybody feels that there's anxiety or actions in the money system of the world. So everybody is running back to gold. And Zimbabwe, fortuitously, we had already been doing that since about 4 or 5 years ago. So what were once vices are now virtues. What was once despised by America, the gold, is now actually a source of virtue in global financial transaction. That's why our currency keeps strengthening, and we have the example of our neighboring, of an African country, which has gone gold, which is Ghana, the largest producer on the African continent. They use the cedi, and the cedi is actually now stronger than the US dollar. This is an African currency which is so stronger than the US dollar. So this is a conspiracy of virtue in favor of Africa. And Zimbabwe was right snug in the center of that beautiful conspiracy about the prospect of using gold as the measure of standard in global transactions. That's why our currency is strengthening. Yes, there are downsides to it. It means if you are using the gold, it's a strong currency. Maybe you don't become competitive. But the beauty about it is it helps us probably get to the monocurrency much quicker. The drive to monocurrency is not a question of fiat by the central government. It is a question of choice by the Zimbabweans themselves, saying that we can no longer use the US dollar as the main currency of the country. We would rather have ours, which is strengthening. And this is exactly the way we will go to the monocurrency, by market choice, not by fiat from the central government. So this is one of the key success factors of our president, which makes a population which was shattered by inflation since 2008. They want security in the assurance that their currency will hold value, and President Mnangagwa is delivering precisely that assurance. So it is part of this confidence about his leadership which is making people be comfortable with the support of resolution number 1. So we will not be distracted by those who are howling in the dark from somewhere else. We know the usual pack of people who do that. For your own information, ZANU-PF and I took part in that war. We had an important diktat. Anything which the enemy likes is precisely what you must dislike. So no matter what Smith promoted as something good for the African population during the war, ZANU-PF as a fighting force, guerrilla force, said anything which Smith wants, it's wrong, we don't like it. Because how can it be that a protagonist, an enemy, and a friend may like the same common thing? It's not possible. So we are not moved by those noises which comes from the traditional people who have never liked ZANU-PF. It actually gingers our resolve to go the way we are going, because the noises of the enemy are an indicator of the fact that we are on the right path. If we are on the wrong path, the enemy will be quiet and wishing that we continue to be on the wrong path so that we fail. But if the enemy is making too much noises about what we are doing, we take comfort. We say, right. That's what we do in ZANU-PF. So please be assured that we will resolutely support the resolution number 1, be it at grassroots level, be it at parliament level. We are going to be championing it, and we are hoping that the parliament can move quickly and decisively to resolve that matter. We also have been doing well on the global stage. I think all of you saw the sterling performance of our president in Dubai when he was being interviewed by probably the foremost podcast journalist of the time, which is Tucker Carlson. This is an invitation which has been on the cards since about March for our president to appear on Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson is the heralder, the one who announces the messenger of President Trump. He is firmly in the camp of President Trump. And when you don't get an interview with him just for the sake of it. When he gets to an interview, there is a purpose to that interview from the American government. And you could see he was chuffed by the performance of our president in Dubai. I could hear him constantly chuckling in the background as our president answered his questions. There was none of that paternalistic and patronizing attitude by the Americans. We've earned respect from the foremost pressmen of the biggest superpower in the world. And our president lived up to the billing on the global stage, showing his mettle as a statesman of great capability. There he was, President Mnangagwa, deflecting criticisms, promoting the Zimbabwe agenda, promoting the Afrocentric aspirations of the Zimbabwe people, which are based on the fact that we are friend to all and enemy to none, and that we pursue a Zimbabwean Pan-Africanist line without fear or favor to anybody, to our former post-colonial powers, and also to our traditional friends. In all our interaction with either of them, we seek what is good for Zimbabwe. We have now need to track to those who may have their own interests, geopolitical interests. We pursue an Afrocentric Zimbabwe promotion vision as we deal in diplomacy, as we deal in economic interaction, and as we deal in any other socio-economic endeavor on the global stage. So you saw it in Dubai, but it's more than that. His stature within his neighbors is always rising. His stature on the global stage is also rising. You just heard that the European community has removed the sanctions against Zimbabwe. This is a good thing. They wanted an excuse to do that. So we gave them a peer review mechanism, a peer review process about Zimbabwe being subjected to certain yardsticks by its peer African brothers from the African Union. A presentation was made in Addis Ababa, and it was unanimously and generously received. So we are saying to our African brothers, come and measure up us on every index which you may want. We have nothing to hide. We are content with what we are doing. We think what we are doing is good for the democracy of Zimbabwe. What we are doing is good for the prosperity of the Zimbabwe people. And we are open to be studied by our fellow African countries who have a shared interest in the vision of a renaissance of Africa. So this was presented in Addis Ababa. Everybody was, like I said, was happy. And the European Union used that aspect. Can I get some water? Used that aspect to as a pretext or as an opportunity to remove sanctions on Zimbabwe. So the biggest trading bloc in the world, which is the European Union, has now thrown its doors for Zimbabwe to access markets, but also to access capital from Europe, which of course is a good thing because it adds an element of competitiveness in the economic activity of Zimbabwe. And we are now saying to those who are inclined to racialize investment in Zimbabwe, all companies which come here, they are local. And if you think that a certain country had been too active in the Zimbabwean politics, rather than try to racialize your criticism of that country, we are not a racist country. No, go to Europe, take this opportunity, bring your best investors from Europe on the ground in Zimbabwe. Then they can perform to the standard which you're aspiring to. And if they perform to the standard which you're aspiring to, you can show to the other side, whoever is already traditional on the market, that we can outgame you, we can outcompete you. So within that competition of capital from Europe, against capital from India, against capital from China, the net gainer is the Zimbabwe people. We don't want people who criticize without performing on the ground. And unoita chako chaunofunga kuti ndechemandiriri ichocho tochiona haikona kungoti kuita mbiri yechitsiga kuti hey tinoita pane vanoita zvisingabviri ngavabvirisi moto paground tivaone. If you think that investment from China is not good, if you think that investment from India is not good for Zimbabwe, and you are enamored to post-colonial nations from Europe, well, they've come into the ring officially. They've removed the sanctions. Ground. And of course, like I said, the net gainer is Zimbabwe will become more prosperous with capital from Europe competing against capital from the newly emergent economies. And then we can bid our labor, which is the best on the African continent, which is the most productive, which turns capital to profit in the shortest period of time. It can then show its mettle, with Chinese sourced capital, with the Indian sourced capital, with the Indonesian sourced capital, competing against European Union sourced capital on the global market. Who is the winner? Zimbabwe. So don't racialize investment source origins. It's not Zimbabwean. We never fought as a racist country. Otherwise, Russia would never have supported us as the Soviet Union. China would not have supported us, because they are all white. We never used the race when fighting for independence. We are common humanity. So we want to measure everybody who comes and cooperates with Zimbabwe on the basis that we are common humanity. Don't invoke issues about the yellow peril or any other, racially based snippets against various investors who may be coming into Zimbabwe. The other thing, of course, is the Americans are also throwing in their overtures to Zimbabwe. It was a beauty in Cape Town, at the Indaba in Cape Town, to see none other than Pamela Tremont, the Zimbabwean ambassador of the United States. She was punting for Zimbabwe to American investors in Cape Town. She even went on social media doing that. America even reached out to our delegation. We had discussions with our Minister of Foreign Affairs in Dubai, officially. So we like the Trump administration. We like their focus on coming to Africa as an economic player and not as a deliverer of strictures about democracy and human rights and all those things which our supine but empty opposition are prone to act upon. These nebulous, untouchable values, virtues, zvana democracy, zvana human rights, azvidyiwi mudzimba dzevanhu, mumafamilies evanhu. But this was the traditional Eurocentric approach to Africa. Because of the performance of China, India, and the other emergent countries, they realized that Africans are like any other normal human beings. They want material things to live, have a better life. So if you are there to teach them without making them materially better, Africans will abandon you. That's why the Europeans have, post-colonial nations, have found difficulties in West Africa. We have the same aspirations as Americans or British or Europeans. And this is the material betterment of our lives. So when America comes to Africa with that approach, we hail the Trump administration for finally realizing that what Europe and America have thought are what they want to materially aspire to is exactly what Africans also want. What a beauty that for the first time, America is thinking of building a railway line from Africa, for Africa, in Africa, putting huge monies for the Lobito to Ndola, to the copper belt of Zambia and DRC. America has never built a railway line in Africa before. we now 150 years of interaction with America. They've never done that. But now America, the biggest, deep and deepest capital market in the world, is now is now opening its vaults of capital to develop the resources of Africa in a win-win cooperation. They no longer think that the resources of Africa are theirs. They want to come and deal with the Africans. They are seeing the success which China has done on Africa. And sometimes you say, copying somebody is the best, being copied is the best form of flattery. Being imitated is the best form of flattery. So we want the fact that America is now imitating what China has been doing in Africa. It's a good thing. They are the biggest, the number one economy of the world. So like I said earlier on about Zimbabwe's economic performance vis-a-vis the Europeans, this is a good thing that Africa can have competing capital from America, because this is the age of capital. If you don't have capital, you can't make progress as a country. Marx said this when the Industrial Revolution started. We are in the age of capital. So Africa now is in a catbird position to deal with those who have excess dollops of capital in their markets at home. Now Africa is tapping those markets. We are no longer being confined to the noises of NGOs who come with a Land Cruiser with goodies which fill the back part of the Land Cruiser for an indigent African population. And they talk more about nebulous, values, democracy, human rights, nothing bad. But what we need is to fill stomachs, what we need is to send people to school, what we need is people to have a better health, to have better life expectations. This is done by improving the material condition of the body. And the issue of capital for Africa is a good thing for the continent. And we welcome America for that approach. And I'm sure the president's message to them, as usual, is that come to Zimbabwe. Let's do business. And please, let's not talk about our cooperation with other countries. Just to show that you can do better than them. And if you do better than them, we naturally go with you on that particular project. So, we are fair as a country. We have no particular preferences upon that. And we are openly and excitedly looking at America becoming an investor in Zimbabwe. And we are also excited about America becoming a market for Zimbabwe. This is the biggest market in the world. Imagine if America, in its main challenge today, and its main challenge is to build an infrastructure which is as modern as that one you find in China. China is streaked ahead in infrastructure development with sleek trains which run at 350 kilometers per hour, and a just-in-time delivery system whereby this phone in China, you get all the parts to manufacture this phone in 3 days in Shenzhen. If you try to do it in America, it will take you 6 weeks at most, if ever. So that's why everybody goes to China, every industrialist to China. They have got a supply chain efficiency which is unparalleled. And now you are seeing their use of robotics. Perhaps some of you watched their New Year celebrations 2-3 days ago. You saw those robots performing like human beings on the stage. This is the level at which China has leveled its skills in the new energy of artificial intelligence. So the other country which has got similar capabilities is the United States. If they can come to Zimbabwe and be part of the quest for Zimbabwe's Vision 2030, we will reach there much earlier than we ever thought, which we are already doing anyway. That's why everybody wants the president to continue to be on the driving seat. They are saying that if it ain't broken, why do you want to mend it? Let this man continue, because that's what he's doing. He's doing a good job. Why do you want to remove a good man who is doing a good job simply because there's a clamor by certain people that we should take over. No, no, no. If you want something good for Zimbabwe, then you must align yourself with what is good for the population of Zimbabwe, who are choosing to say that President Mnangagwa should continue in office. Why would you want to perform? You are untested. You have never won an election before, and you want to say, I want to take over. The people of Zimbabwe want comfort in the security, and security in what they have right now. So we are doing well on the global stage because the European Union has decided to forgo sanctions. We are doing well because America has decided to start transactional diplomacy in Zimbabwe. And like I said before, fortune favors the prepared. With the currency which we have, gold, we are in good stead to deal with all these converted friends who are trooping back to Zimbabwe. So by and large, this is what I wanted to speak to you about, what is going on within our party. But mainly, of course, the resolution number 1, but more importantly, the sterling diplomatic performance by our president. They are now finding that he is a statesman of rare caliber. Now you can understand why, for all the shortcomings of the First Republic, we managed to perform the way we did. He was part of that. Even when he was in a subsidiary position in terms of leadership, he still used the guidance of his wisdom to offer the First Republic. That's why, by and large, it was successful. But we are lucky now that after 2017, he is on top himself. He is in the driving seat himself. And his position internally has never been so strong within the party. His position at the national stage has never been so strong. You can see by the string of by-election victories, even in the collapse of the opposition vote in urban areas. And this is going to become the norm. The economic prospects started in rural areas where the kick-in was easier, with tobacco and many other crops now becoming top performers in the national economy. Then gold, with the SME sector vibrantly contributing so much to the foreign currency earnings of the country. 2 weeks ago, you noticed when the gold price spiked, all the US dollars came out of the mattresses. They all came out of the pillows from those who have disposable US dollars. They were in search of gold, and nobody was selling gold. Now you can see that the US dollar is no longer that gold currency for the Zimbabwe people. Gold is. You couldn't get anybody who was prepared to sell gold, no matter, even if you were a packet of US dollars last week. So the president was right to use gold as the currency anchor of Zimbabwe. It is inevitably going to rise in price. It may wobble along the way to the lows and the heights, but the trend line is upwards. So this is the country which President Mnangagwa has delivered to the Zimbabweans. The one which even the IMF now says is doing very well. Our growth figures are being acknowledged even by the foremost institutions in the world. This is a good thing. So, Comrade President Mnangagwa, let him continue. He's alert. You could see the way he was answering those questions. Very alert. To the foremost inquisitive journalist, Tucker Carlson, of the era. He was alert, intelligent, patriotic, and Pan-African in his answers. So in Nyango, I've always rooted for him. When everybody clamors for leadership change, I say I have one dog in the fight. My dog is the president. And let him continue with the job. You see, sometimes, you get a very sound marriage which is performing well. Then there are some people who may be in the streets who want to be a suitor of of the marriage partners. So you want eventually them to divorce. Then after they divorce, they think of courting. Then out of that courting, you may become the choice of those people when you are right there in the street clamoring to become the partner of any of the two parties in marriage. Maybe your dream is a bridge too far. You know, why don't you let the marriage continue and look for opportunity and acquiesce to the successful marriage which the president has with his party membership, with his electorate, and of course with the generality of the global market, be it in business, be it in diplomacy. He is on his high star in all those markers: the population, the electorate, the party membership, and indeed the business community, as well as all other socio-economic players. Everybody is ticking positive on the boxes of each and every index of performance by the president. So it ain't broken, don't try to fix it. That's where I end. I'm prepared to answer any questions as usual. I have nothing, you know. Well, yes, there's also another matter. You know, there was a lot of noise. I'm glad my director pointed out. My condolences, I expressed them to the Geza family. You may want to know that I've historically been very close to that family because two of its fiddlings are still alive after going to the war. It's a very heroic family or clan. In the war, we used to have one of the security bases which Comrade Tongogara named Spesintin. He was one of the early fighters who fell, very, very heroic, and General Tongogara felt it was a due honor for one of the bases where we were staying during the war to be named after Pesintin. He belongs to the Geza clan. His other brother is Sam Geza, who was among the leadership of the Zipa during the war, which came from, which took over the running of the war and revived the armed struggle in Mozambique, a joint effort by Zanla and Zipra, which started the war. They dispatched 700 fighters by a ship called Mapinduzi from Tanzania to come into Mozambique. They are the ones who recruited. I'm among those pioneer refugees into Mozambique in 1975. So these 600, they did a lot for Zimbabwe. They opened the front in 1975. But they also became the training corps of the thousands of cadres, of refugee, of recruits who were in Mozambique that time. And they shortened the turnaround time of deployment to the front because we had a homegrown military training corps in Mozambique, which could quickly convert recruits into soldiers. So our reinforcement rate by 1976 was so phenomenal that it forced the Rhodesians and the West to go to Geneva for talks. His brother Sam is still alive. We had a meeting. He was my lecturer at Shitepo College in the war. I told you the parties going back to school by those seminars. We actually had such formal teaching under the trees during the war. And Sam Geza was actually my lecturer, my professor at Shitepo School of College. After I had been wounded at the front, I became a cadre to be trained in political ideology, higher level political ideology. Unfortunately, he got caught up in the Ashanti thing, and he left the armed struggle in 1977 and was exiled to Cabo Delgado. We had a meeting. They came to the Museum of African Liberation to see me, because they had gaps in the life of Geza, which I had, because I met Geza in 1975 when Mozambique opened the refugee camp. Where a few hundred suddenly grew to thousands, and Geza was among them. So I've known him from the beginning of the resumption of the struggle in Mozambique. Of course, later he left, he didn't go to the front. He went to training for additional training in Romania from 1977. And he only came back home after 2 years into independence in 1982. That's when I met him again, but he was coming from Romania. I was very active from 2013 onwards in fighting against the usurpation of power, the attempts of trying to set up a dynasty by the First Republic's first president. He is one who brought me into play in the fight against the G40s. I've got a lot which I can talk about Geza, and he also had excess funds which he used generously to support the war veterans. And for you who may remember 2017, 2016, there was an attempt to arrest Mahia and Matemadanda, by clandestine police operation by the G40s, and they were looking for them. For your own information, they were hiding at Sanyat, at Geza's farm. Comrade Ambassador Matemadanda, who is now in Mozambique, and Comrade Mahia, who is the Secretary of War Veterans Affairs in the new organ of the Politburo. So for us, he's a comrade we worked with for that very difficult time of safeguarding this permanent Zimbabwe revolution. He became ill, and when you are ill, you become vulnerable. And of course, the detractors saw an opportunity to try to use him, and they abused him to say some outrageous things about the leadership of the party. Look, as war veterans, we say it was unfortunate that such a misfortune befell him of being ill, and he became vulnerable to being abused by those who all feel that hanging on to the heritage of the Zimbabwe revolution gives them some legitimacy. Within their own capacities, they are zero. They have a vacuum. They look for validation from those who fought the war each time. Because they have their own, they don't have any yardstick or self-validation other than trying to poach from the national liberation struggle and the exploits of the heroes of Zimbabwe. So, look, that's what happens in a democracy. I wasn't around. I was in Mombasa when his body finally buried. I definitely would have been available at his burial for personal reasons, personal bonds, and for the things which he did when we worked together against the G40s. He was at the forefront. And it was that aspect which they then tried to turn against ZANU-PF, because within themselves they have nothing to offer. They are vacuum. They sell water they sell petrol as the cure of cancer. Their message has no content, and they always are groping for validation, like I said, from the National Liberation Movement and its heroes. We have enough heroes. We buried another one yesterday. So look, if they attempt to steal one or two, let them be. We have no shortage of heroes in our camp if they attempt to steal one or two. But all the same, we pay. I want to honor him as a comrade, both in pre-independence and after independence. And I'm clear that from my principal, he also shares the same sentiment. I think.
Please give us your name and media house. Very interesting.
You may want to know that Semgeza is the son-in-law of President Mugabe. People know its regime. The agricultural specialist who is Korean Republic Extension Services, who became the wife of the late Dr. Ata. He was successful. His first marriage was to Semgeza. So Geza was also married, a relative of the first family of Zimbabwe. I didn't know that when we were together, it became outside Chimola in 1975. When we university students championed Mugabe to be the leader of the refugees, so Geza was with us, very, very active. Maybe he also was doing it for the relationship which he knew about President Mugabe. We were not allowed to know who he related to during the war. So you can see he's somebody I've been with for a long time. Like an emotional attachment. He's a family friend to me. And even a few days before his demise, he was sending messages to me, to my wife, as our family's best friend. Of course, we were different politically, but we were fully cognizant of the health condition in which he was, which made him go away. He was trying to buy life, but life belongs to God. And the chief is trying to pray God for him by promising him the prospect of health when his condition was deteriorating. So I can understand what he was doing. I can't countenance it. I can't forgive it, but I can countenance the circumstances in which I was doing. The only thing important besides that is your health. And your health, when your health begins to falter, you have to do anything. I say this with every heart, but I also despise those who always think that because they are empty vessels themselves, ideologically, politically, they always want to put upon the rich heritage of those heroes who fought for the modern day of Zimbabwe and gave it its state, the state of Zimbabwe, which can deliver so much prospect of prosperity to Africa, and which can also put on the stage a statesman of the caliber of President Mugabe. All the institutional memory, starting from the 60s when he was pioneer trainee of the guerrilla army, which eventually became a mammoth military force to overcome the British. It's a growth trajectory which is rich, which delivers Africa and Zimbabwe as the only modern African state with the capacity to fight and win a war against the foremost imperial power for ages, the British Empire. Our friends, the Afrikaners, our fellow citizens, the Afrikaners in South Africa, they go against the British in 1900. They were defeated. And they respect Zimbabwe so much, they say, you are in Africa, there are two people who fought a modern war against Britain. It's us Afrikaners, but heads off to you Zimbabweans, we lost you one. That's why the president has got a lot of respect from the Afrikaners. By the way, the Afrikaners who have found their way of influence in Washington are the ones who are behind Tucker Carlson. They come from what is called the Hudson Institute, which is a pro-Trump think tank in Washington. And these Afrikaners, they play golf with Trump at Mar-a-Lago every weekend. You know the Gary player? You may not know. He was the Nick Prize of golf for many years. The short South African golf, the legendary. He is part of this African outfit around President Trump. Elon Musk, for you. You know of Andre Tina, the one who was dealing with the scorpions. You know the vice president of Amazon is the wife of Andre Pina, who is the vice president of Bezos. So the Afrikaners are the ones who are also championing Zimbabwe and our president in Washington. That's why the Intercapital Council is possible. It is coming from an on-site constituency in Washington. And we want to tell you this. We now have an unspoken lobby group in Washington on behalf of Zimbabwe. It has marginalized all this howling, this echoing from the Democratic Party side of those in Zimbabwe who were loitering around the US aid. Because US aid was essentially an outfit of the Democrats, for a slush fund for the Democrats to influence politics at home, but also to influence politics abroad. So Trump saw it fit to abolish it as soon as he came to power. And that's what collapsed all this clamoring by NGOs. They lost salaries. Zoom Washington so, you can see we are strong and going ahead. They lost the support of their patrons. How does it feel that you go to a church, your usual church, and by the time you arrive and so I told the bishop is no longer in the church, is now converted to another church? That's what is happening. America was the strong rallying cry of those who came to take control of the human rights, pundits or activists in Zimbabwe, and democracy activists of all you and some. Now, there's no way to report to in Washington. And the channel of reporting USA has been cut. And people, the African report to Washington is gone. Now people actually leave. That's why we have Tata Council meeting. And I want to thank you very much for giving Zimbabwe another fighting chance and for giving our president the prospect of projecting himself on the global stage.
Yes, thank you very much. Effort secure with the SABC. Mine has to do with you spoke of Resolution 1 and the bill that is on the table before Parliament. You also spoke about that the president's position within the party is at its strongest. But the way the bill has been tabled, or the way the bill has been presented, it seems that it is avoiding the true test of the electorate in terms of amending the constitution. My question is ZANU-PF confident if the process were to lead to a referendum where the electorate itself will decide on the final outcome of the bill?
Look, I don't want to preempt the processes. Zimbabwe is a constitutional democracy with three pillars of power: parliament, the executive, and the judiciary. So, and these are now, the bodies now in play to all three of them. The executive is done its job, to gazette the bill. The parliament is there to look at the bill. The parliament is actually made up of representatives of the people. Zimbabwe is an elected parliament. They represent the people of Zimbabwe. So they will look at the bill. Then there are those who may want to have different views. There's the third option of scrutiny of the bill, which is the judiciary. So I don't want to be I don't want to put myself too much ahead of those processes which have to be gone through and trying to preempt their duty to look at the current evolution in Zimbabwean politics. We are not afraid of the referendum. If the elections which are going on, the elections are going on now, are an indication we still will speak on the referendum if that becomes the way to go. But for the present time, we are going to go to parliament. In a democracy, that's the representative of the people are in parliament. So let's give that process a chance. But we have no fear of any avenue which may be available to us by the intervention of the other two wings of this government avenue, which is Parliament and the judiciary. We have no fear as a party. We feel that